This game put the fight into heavyweight fight. What a contest. What a couple of great college football playoff semifinals. It was the stand of a lifetime that vaults Ohio State into the national championship game in Atlanta on January 20th.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Well, at the start of this football game, it looked like here we go again. Ohio State is ready to drop the hammer in the first quarter of a college football playoff game. Texas gets the football first. Ohio State comes up with the stop, and then the Buckeyes go all the way down the field. They get into the end zone, and they make an ensuing stop. At the beginning of the football game went exactly like the Ohio State Buckeyes wanted it to go, and it appeared that maybe the trend would continue for the Scarlet and Gray, but Texas was able to take that first punch. We made the boxing match analogy during the preview, and I said, hey, Texas, you know you're going to be dealt a punch, whether it's a jab, whether it's a haymaker, whatever it is. You need to be able to hang in there, and you cannot go to the ground. Now, Ohio State has the football after that second stop, and then there was a lot of emotion in this football game. There was a handful of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. This one from Trevion Henderson, I think, gave Texas a little bit of a window, because after that game, it seemed to flip. And after that game, after that penalty, it seemed like Texas started to rise to their feet. And now this became more of an even game for the next 2.5 quarters. But of course, Ohio State closed this one in great fashion. When I looked at this football game, and I'm watching this football game, I thought both defensive coordinators came out with excellent game plans. Everything just looked so damn hard. Everything just looked so difficult in this football game, and it all started up front in the defensive lines. We knew Ohio State, of course, had a really good front four. We knew Texas had a really good front line. We knew that these offensive lines for each team were going to be tested. They were going to be challenged a little bit, and it certainly was that way. So it all started up front. The defensive success for both of these teams, it was in common, where they were able to have really good performances up front on the defensive line. It was tough to run the football, and that's really where I kind of want to jump off from how good these defensive lines played to what was the result of that. Texas, 29 carries, 58 yards in this game. Ohio State, 24 carries, 81 yards in this game. This is the best that anybody's played against Ohio State's offensive line since that last game of the regular season against the Michigan Wolverines, and we all know what happened there. So first part of a defensive game plan is you have your big boys up front play a good game, and you're able to play well, contain, and stop the run as well. Like when you look at all of the offensive touchdowns in this game, they were all scored by running backs. Number one options weren't open a lot during this game. Number two options weren't open a lot during this game. So what do you see then? You see a lot of pass completions to running backs. You see a lot of these plays, especially for Texas, where running backs are going on wheel routes. They're leaking out of the backfield, and Quinn Ewers is finding these guys. And Steve Sarkisian is finding a way to scheme some of these running backs open, certainly out of the backfield as well. So they all had a cause and an effect, with the defensive line starting to play up front really well, and how it affected, we talked about how it affected the run game and how both teams didn't have a lot of success running the football. I know Quinshon Judkins got a couple of touchdowns in this game, but then it kind of had a cause and effect where the pass game, really, it was altered for both teams. More on that in just a little bit. You know, this was a game that once Texas really started to settle in, and then they got that touchdown, late in the first half, is when there was a big swings of emotion, certainly back and forth. When they tied the football game, they felt great and thought it would be a tie game going into the locker room. But that 75-yard screen pass to Trevion Henderson. Great call, first of all, in that situation. Bad defense by the Longhorns in that particular situation. But then taking the momentum back, I thought was huge for Ohio State. Huge for them, for what all of the confidence that Texas built up, the Buckeyes were able to take it back into their control going into the locker room. I thought that was a huge play within the 60 minutes of this football game as well. We talked about how everything was difficult. The run game was difficult, and some of these number 1 and number 2 options weren't open. And what did we talk about in the preview? And what did a lot of people talk about when it came to these two teams? These are two teams that wanted to hit the explosive plays, and these are two teams that have done a really good job limiting explosive plays. Texas was number 1 in the country coming into this game in plays over 20 yards. Ohio State had played complete shutdown football as it pertained to the passing game since that October 12th loss against the Oregon Ducks. Now, when you look at both of the stat lines from the quarterbacks, you might, considering our first point where we said everything was difficult, and now our second point we're saying limiting explosive, the stat lines might, of course, if you watch the game, of course, you knew what happened. But if you didn't watch the game and you look at the stat lines, you might think, oh, these things don't exactly match up. Will Howard, 24 of 33, 289, a touchdown and an interception. I thought Quinn Ewers played a good game. He kept on fighting, certainly, in this game. 23 of 39, 283 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, and then that late Caleb Downs interceptions. I think it speaks to both of these quarterbacks where it was a challenging effort. Both of the defenses were dialed in on what they wanted to do, yet they kept on fighting, yet they kept on, they were very good at taking what the defense was giving them throughout this game. Both quarterbacks over 280 yards in this game. All right, so why wasn't Ohio State able to hit their explosives over the top? It started with the defensive structure, the defensive game plan for the Texas Longhorns. 2 high safeties, zone coverage, playing off, keeping everything in front of them. If you were Tosh Lupoi, the defensive coordinator for Oregon, sitting at home and watching this game, you must have been just throwing your hat, throwing things at the TV and saying, how were we not able to replicate this type of game plan that Texas did? Because that's ever since they started this playoff and ever since Ohio State and Chip Kelly really made a shift in their offensive approach, this is what you needed to be able to do. Once you're able to contain the explosive plays down the field, now you put a little bit more pressure on Will Howard. We saw him throw a key interception in this game, and now you put a little bit more pressure on the run game. And as we said before, the Ohio State run game did not get over 100 yards in this football game. So I thought the zone coverage and what they were doing with their safeties over the top and keeping everything in front of them, great game plan. And we knew that's what Texas had been doing, to be able to keep plays in front of them all season long and then making sure tackles throughout this game. Let me run through some stat lines for these Ohio State wide receivers. Jeremiah Smith, remember what he did at the Rose Bowl? Remember how he looked like a cyborg in that game against Oregon secondary? How about 1 catch for 3 yards? Okay, that's certainly a start for Texas, but I think what the rest of the stat line, it tells the story about how Ohio State was able to adjust throughout this game and what Texas was certainly throwing at them. Emeka Egbuka, 5 catches for 51. How about Carnell Tate, the number 3 receiver all year long for the Buckeyes? 7 catches, 87 yards. He was the leading receiver for Ohio State in this game. G. Scott Jr., the tight end, 5 catches for 30 yards. Half of Will Howard's completions went to either Carnell Tate and G. Scott. So once again, what do we circle back to? When the first option isn't open, when the second option isn't open, where is the football going? Hey, it pays to have depth, this kind of depth at the wide receiver position. Carnell Tate would be a wide receiver 1 on almost every other team in college football. He certainly stepped up big time in this game to be able to keep on making plays, moving the chains down the field for Ohio State offensively. All right, this was a 14-14 game. And maybe momentum was going back in favor of the Texas Longhorns, but I want to highlight a very key drive for Ohio State. This was a point. This was a game where it's like when plays needed to be made in the fourth quarter, Ohio State made them. Texas did not. 13 plays, 88 yards. It took more than 7 minutes off of the clock midway through the fourth quarter. That made it a 21-14 game. at that point in time as well. And I want to say this about Ohio State's pass rush. I want to make sure that I kind of give them their props when it comes to defending Quinn Ewers as well. The pass rush was able to shrink the pocket. Now, this was a good Texas offensive line. It's been a good Texas offensive line all year. I thought Quinn Ewers, it seemed like he was constantly stepping up, shifting right, stepping up, going to the left. It never seemed like he had a clean pocket, straight drop back, and he was able to deliver the football. It always seemed like something was happening back there in the pocket in this game. They may have not gotten home a lot, but their front four, their defensive line, of course, there were some blitzes mixes in there as well. It certainly had an effect on how Ohio State approached the passing game. 11 of the 23 completed passes for the Longhorns went out to running backs, and that kind of goes into what we talked about before. Oh boy, they did it again. The goal line Goliaths. We got to finish this thing up because there's a lot to break down with that last goal line opportunity for Texas. Of course, they had first and goal at the 1. You get a pass interference penalty, or it was first and goal at the 2. You have a pass interference penalty, and it gives you first and goal at the 1. 4 plays to get 1 yard. Texas got real cute. Texas got real cute there down by the goal line. Look, I think that Ohio State's red zone success on defense might have gotten into the head of Steve Sarkisian a little bit. And Sark is one of the best play callers out there. He's one of the best schematic offensive coaches in the entire country. There's a reason why a report said that some NFL teams might be wanting Sark here in the very near future as well. Like, okay, so you run the football up the middle and it gets stuffed. But then they go toss sweep. And when you have a team and a defense, especially in a short yardage situation like this, like Ohio State, where you have a Lathan Ransom and especially a Caleb Downs, and he's the one that made the play in this particular situation. Like when you have defensive backs that can be shot out of a cannon and run support the way they've been able to do all season long, toss sweep does not seem like a very smart call. They kept Arch Manning, who had been on the sideline, who of course was a backup quarterback on the sidelines for this one. I could have seen them, incorporating some QB runs somehow to give them a little bit of pep in their step to maybe get off tackle on a QB power a little bit quicker. But of course that didn't happen as well. I thought, okay, now when you get into that at the 7-yard line, at the 8-yard line, Quinn Ewers had kind of been leading them. It had been building a little bit of confidence in this second half. I thought, okay, maybe this is an opportunity for Quinn to be a little bit more comfortable. They weren't having success in the run game, as I talked about before. Maybe now he's going to be able to deliver a pass, whether it's a slant, whether it's a fade, whatever it is. And then at that moment in time, Jack Sawyer determined, I'm gonna take the football away from my former roommate, and I'm going to be an Ohio State legend. What a play where Texas could have tied the football game. Instead, Jack Sawyer, fumble, scoop, takes it all the way to the house for the touchdown. And another goal line stand by the goal line Goliaths from Columbus, Ohio. It happened multiple times in the win against Penn State. Remember that game against the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the middle of the season? It was the first game, I believe, without Josh Simmons at tackle. And Nebraska's defensive line was giving Ohio State fits all game long. It was a one-possession game and a one-possession game. And a goal line stand, keeping Nebraska out of the end zone, was a key determining factor to them holding on for that victory in the middle of the season in Columbus. Goal line defense, red zone defense, goal line stands were a huge factor in some of the tougher wins for Ohio State this season. And this Cotton Bowl, this college football playoff semifinal, that was just another one of them. All right, so the national championship game is set. 2 northern teams are going to be playing down in the heart of the South in Atlanta, Georgia. It is going to be the Ohio State Buckeyes against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Buckeyes early 9.5 points favorites. That seems like a big spread. It could be, considering how Notre Dame's defense is playing. This could be another defensive slugfest. And us up here in Big Ten country, we wouldn't have it any other way. Those are my thoughts on this Cotton Bowl semifinal game. I want to hear your thoughts. How about that goal line stand? How about these defenses, quarterbacks battling through? Jeremiah Smith, only one catch in this game. Leave all your thoughts on all of that in the comments below. I'm Big Ten Ted. The Big Ten just one win away from back-to-back national championships. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.